Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I've lived in my house for over 20 years. It's nothing too fancy, just a modest single-family home on a quarter-acre lot out in the suburbs. The neighborhood is pretty quiet for the most part. Sure, there's the occasional spat with a neighbor over a fence or something minor, but nothing too dramatic, at least until Karen moved in next door about 5 years ago. From the first week she arrived, Karen was a nightmare. She complained about every little thing under the sun. Apparently, my mailbox was the wrong color, and my garden gnomes clashed with her landscaping tastes. I tried to be polite and brush it off at first. I figured she was just particular and would settle in eventually. Oh, how wrong I was. If anything, Karen's pettiness escalated over the following months. She began calling in noise complaints if I so much as sneezed too loudly after 9 p.m. My poor dog got the blame for excessive barking, even when he was silently napping inside. It was getting out of hand. So when my husband Tom and I had the chance to get away on a 2-week Hawaiian vacation last month, we jumped at it a much-needed break from the suburban drama and Karen's watchful eye. I asked my neighbor across the street, Mark, to keep an eye on the house and take in the mail while we were gone. Karen was sure to be a nightmare if she noticed us away for an extended time. The first few days in Hawaii were absolute bliss, no petty complaints or nosy Nancy keeping tabs on our every move. Tom and I relaxed on the beach and enjoyed fruity cocktails to our heart's content. About midway through the trip, we made the mistake of briefly checking emails. I wish we had just stayed off the grid. There it was, an alarming message from Mark. Call me immediately about urgent situation at your home. Karen added again, my heart dropped. This couldn't be good. I called Mark right away, my mind racing with possibilities. Mark, what's going on? What did Karen do? I asked nervously. It's bad, really bad, Mark replied. Just 2 days after you left, Karen got a bulldozer and demolished your garage. It's completely leveled to the ground. She's claiming that according to some new survey, your garage was partially on her property line. But I looked it up with the county, and the property lines are exactly as they've always been. I was in utter shock. That garage housed all our tools, lawnmower, and Tom's beloved classic car that he had painstakingly restored. The car alone was worth tens of thousands. Mark continued, I already called the police and filed a report for you. Karen's insisting she has the right to tear down her half of the garage. She's absolutely deranged. I felt sick to my stomach. How could someone be so destructive and entitled? I thanked Mark profusely for handling the police report and immediately started looking into flights home. Our vacation was effectively ruined. Tom and I spent the next few days anxiously waiting to get home and survey the damage. When we pulled up to the house, the destruction was even worse than I imagined. Our peaceful suburban home now looked like a war zone. The garage was completely demolished, with Karen already pouring a new concrete foundation on our land. She definitely took advantage of our absence to commit this atrocity. We immediately got a lawyer involved and pressed charges against Karen for the willful destruction of property. Over the following weeks, I learned just how deep Karen's issues went. Apparently, she had pulled similar stunts around town for years, bullying people with frivolous lawsuits and abusing the system to get her way. She thought she could get off scot-free destroying something that didn't belong to her, but not this time. The evidence against Karen was overwhelming. After dragging it through court for nearly a year, Karen was sentenced to 2 years in prison for her crimes. Not only that, but she was ordered to pay over $100,000 in restitution for destroying the garage and damaging Tom's beloved car. As Karen was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs, she made a dramatic scene, as expected. This is so unfair, she wailed. I was just taking back what belongs to me. Our survey clearly showed that land was mine. I had to laugh at her delusional lies. Even now, she couldn't admit fault or take responsibility for her behavior. The judge wasn't buying any of it either. With Karen's reputation, the whole town was glad to finally see her get a taste of justice. Over time, we rebuilt the garage and restored some sense of normalcy. The house no longer feels like a crime scene with police tape surrounding it, but I'll never forget coming home from vacation to find our garage mysteriously bulldozed at the hands of our psychotic neighbor. The moral of this story, if you're going on vacation, make sure your home isn't next door to a certified lunatic like Karen. At least I can rest assured that Karen won't be bothering anyone for the next couple of years from her new home behind bars. The next one is a pro-revenge story. The cast note that none of these names are real. They're all pseudonyms to meet guidelines. Brooke, my sister; Angie, accounting girl; Mark, milquetoast boss; Victor, vice president of operations. This story is about my sister's first job after graduating from college with a bachelor's degree in business management back in the mid-70s. She was hired by that recording tape company whose advertising tagline was, "Is it real or is it Memorex?" Anyway, her job was the travel coordinator for both the sales and tech support teams out in the field who came to the corporate offices periodically for various types of meetings or training, depending on the field employee's specialty. Brooke's responsibilities included booking airline flights, hotels, rental cars, approving per diems, and other travel-related upfront arrangements. It didn't take her long to figure out that there were a lot of no-shows, particularly from the sales staff who always seemed to have some valid excuse not to make it to the meeting, and often with last-minute cancellations, I've just booked this golf game with my most important client this week, so can you reschedule me type of reasons. Seeing how these cancellations were costing the company big bucks, Brooke hatched a plan that created class rosters for each class and would, just like a teacher, make notes as to who showed up and who didn't. After the class was over, she would calculate how much those who didn't show up had cost the company in terms of cancellation fees, missed flights, etc. and to Mark. His reaction, typical of a middle manager protecting his little fiefdom, would take her report, tell her I'll look into it, throw it into his inbox, and then promptly forget about it. My sister has a tremendous amount of patience unless you're being stupid, which in this case Mark was, as far as she was concerned. Fast forward a couple of months, the reports are still stacked on top of each other in Mark's inbox, and Brooke's getting real frustrated because these field guys are abusing the time and effort she's putting in while attempting to get them in for their required classes. So one day, Brooke's having lunch in the company cafeteria along with a gal from corporate accounting. They get to talking, and Angie mentions that she's noticed the travel department's expenses are really high percentage-wise compared to others and asks if Brooke has any idea why. That was all it took. My sister unloaded her frustration with all the cancellations with no repercussions, thus sending the travel department's budget off the charts, not to mention the fact she wasn't getting any support from Mark towards reducing the numbers. Brooke tells Angie she's got an idea to put an end to the waste, but she wants to get approval from somebody higher up the food chain in order to implement her idea because she doubts Mark's ability to comprehend, let alone implement. Angie tells Brooke that she thinks she knows exactly who Brooke needs to talk to, and within a couple of days, Brooke and Angie are sitting in a plush corner office talking to the Vice President of Operations, Victor, explaining the situation. It only took Victor a couple of minutes to make a decision after Brooke described what was going on, plus her idea on how to correct it, and he told Angie that Brooke's idea was brilliant and that the policy change would become effective on the 1st of the month. 10 days later, which he followed up with a memorandum sent to all employees shortly after their meeting was over. Paydays were the 5th and the 20th. Those in the field who had expense accounts had to complete and turn them into accounting by the 5th to be processed and paid along with regular wages, bonuses, and commissions on the 20th. Brooke's policy change idea, with Victor's blessing, was to charge back against the offender's expense account the costs associated with getting him to his corporate meeting when he didn't show up, airline fares, hotel rooms, rental cars, etc. Brooke told me that the first month the policy went into effect, the howls of protest could be heard all over Silicon Valley as several ended up with minuscule paychecks after the chargebacks. But the policy had exactly the results Brooke wanted. Within 3 months, everyone showed up to their meetings on time as scheduled and virtually without any more no-shows. The next one is a petty revenge story. I think this is the most petty I have ever been, and no need to ask if I was the a-hole, because I totally was, but it tickled me and a few others. This happened a few weeks back and still makes my friends who I have made laugh about it. I do deliveries around our town, and as such I need gas to do so. There is one gas station I hit up every morning before work because the gas is cheapest, it is on my route to work, and has a better selection of breakfast snacks and drinks than the others around it. Since I have been stopping off there a minimum of 3 times a week for the last 6 years, I have gotten to know the owner and a few of the longtime staff there. They are all good people and treat me nicer than normal employees do, so I try to treat them with as much respect as I possibly can. One morning while I'm filling up, one of the female employees, we'll call her Rachel for the story, was standing idly by one of the pumps. She has a few mental problems, but is one of the nicest people I know. So while my gas is being filled, I strike up a conversation. She tells me she ain't doing so well because she is supposed to take out the trash from the outside bins and put it in the dumpster around the side of the building. The way the building is designed, there is only one way to get to the dumpster to put anything in it, and that way is clearly marked with signs and paint saying "Do not park here" or "Block the dumpster." I look over and there is a caravan of about 5 minivans parked around the area. Most were in legitimate parking spaces, but the biggest one with a massive roof rack was parked awkwardly in front of the dumpster, completely blocking it off. I asked Rachel if she had asked them to move, and she said they would move when they were done, and that was over 30 minutes ago. I feel for Rachel and her sad face at that time, so I tell her I will make it up to her. After getting the nozzle put back up and getting my car ready, I drove over to where the van was parked and parked my car in the first open parking spot behind it, effectively completely blocking it in. I get out of my car and walk about 5 steps away when a screeching Karen pokes her head out of the front window of the van. "Hey, can you move your car? I'm parked here." Me, "Oh, but that's not a parking spot." Her, "Well, yeah, that's why I'm trying to get out of it." Me, "Okay, but hold on, I'll just be a minute." I proceed to walk inside the store to get my morning meal as I hear Karen screaming for me to come back. As the door shut in the store, I notice the place is overrun with families buying travel snacks. They are all milling about, but a few are looking out the window saying, "I wonder what Karen is yelling about. They are clearly all in her caravan." By the time I grab my food and drink and make it to the checkout line, she has stormed her way in and is trying to tell me to move my car now. I tell her I can't leave, that would be stealing, so I am going to buy my stuff and leave. She huffs at this and notices everyone in front of her as a member of her traveling party, so she just glares at me the whole time. I finally make it to the front after like 10 minutes and go, "Oh wait, shoot, this isn't what I wanted. I'll go put it back and grab what I really want." Luckily, I was still very early for getting to work, so I was milking it for all it was worth. Karen is fuming when I make it back to the line. Someone else is getting in line in front of me, and Karen is trying to tell him to move so I can go first. The owner will call her. Jess tells her she isn't allowed to talk to customers that way, and one more outburst from her, and she will kick her out of the store. Karen mutters to herself but is silent. I go up to check out, moving and talking as slowly as I can, and ask for a lottery ticket as well. After paying, since no one is behind me, I scratch it off, and what do you know, on a free ticket, so I buy another one and proceed to scratch it off. Karen, up to that point, had been mildly tolerable, but then she lets out this unholy screech and tells me to stop wasting her time, to which Jess tells her to leave. Karen starts to refuse, and Jess picks up her phone, threatening to call the cops. Karen swiftly leaves at this point, now yelling at her caravan as to why they have to wait. I thank Jess for all that she has done so far and explain what was going on, still really slowly. She laughs and tells me how much she hates people who park there. They get all defensive when you tell them that they can't park there, but this is the first time anyone got their comeuppance over it. I left and saw Rachel standing near my vehicle doing her best not to laugh. I load up my car and ask if everything is better, and she nods enthusiastically. I move my car to the other side of the lot and watch them all leave one by one, but not before Karen pulled out in front of someone and almost wrecked. The next one is a malicious compliance story. At my last job, my main duty was the IT, manager for the entire location, among other duties. I had been there for 3.5 years at that point, and as I was trusted by everyone, if I had something important to say, people listened. During COVID, while other departments' budgets were getting slashed and employees were getting laid off, I was able to replace a lot of our aging IT infrastructure. At the beginning of my last year there, the owner hired a young I only tell the truth even though you won't like it narcissist as his second in charge. He hired this bonehead as his successor to run this location, while the owner would focus on opening up a second one. In the first 3 months, Bonehead pissed off everyone to the point where 15 people from various positions left the company to find another job. This was during the pandemic where a lot of people were thankful they had a job, and 15 people were like, "I'm going to risk finding another job in the middle of a pandemic rather than stay here. He was that bad." As Bonehead started to piss off our customer base and our sales started to suffer, we switched over to cost-cutting mode. The owner had largely checked out at this point, so longtime vendors were replaced with friends and family of Bonehead. Services were downgraded or cut. Pay plans for the sales department were messed with, which further eroded the morale of the workforce. One day, Bonehead comes to me and tells me to stop doing safety checks and maintenance repairs on our products so sales could post larger sales grosses. I loudly objected and went to the owner. As the owner is always happy to hear something about making more money, he threw his support behind Bonehead's idea. A few months of this goes by, and after he fired one of my employees on my birthday because he refused to give Bonehead access to the server room, it was restricted to me, the owner, and my employee. I knew it was time to go. I find a new job, put in my 2 weeks notice, and of course, Bonehead stops my direct deposit on payday the day after I put in my 2 weeks notice. I decide it isn't worth working the extra 2 weeks and inform them that I am out of there while filing with the state over my wages being withheld. As I'm walking out the door, Bonehead reminds me that I'm no longer an employee of the company and not to get involved with the company's affairs and possible legal repercussions if I say anything negative about the company. My new job pays more, fewer hours, less stress. Fast forward to this Monday, I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months and will be cut off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and see that my account is paid, so after a few back and forth exchanges, I find out fast forward to this Monday, I get a call from my local internet provider. They tell me my internet service bill has gone unpaid for the last 6 months and will be cut off if I don't pay immediately. I log in and see that my account is paid, so after a few back and forth exchanges, I find out that I am still the point of contact for my former job's account on their internet service. Remembering what was told to me when I left, I just informed them that I cannot get involved as I no longer work there. They asked me for an updated point of contact. If they cannot get one, they will be forced to suspend their service. I repeat that I am not allowed by threat of legal action to be involved in their affairs and leave it at that. An hour later, a buddy I know who still works there calls me and tells me they had to stop working as their internet service was shut off. I play stupid, but it takes 3 days to restore it. The next one is an entitled people story. My wife has a friend we'll call Beth who is a single mom but receives a lot of help from her parents. They often watch her kid, allowed them to move in rent-free while she was getting settled after relocating, things of that nature. She's pretty ungrateful about all the help she gets. I've heard her complaining about her parents over things like them asking her to get milk on her way home from work and having to take care of her mom while she was sick with COVID. She also expects her parents to watch her kid without giving any notice. Beth also has a really negative opinion about all men, stemming from her terrible choices in partners, and is antagonistic and vocal about it. She loves to pick fights with the dads in the friend group about how men don't contribute domestically and they're all oppressive scum. The dads in the friend group are very involved with their children and are good domestic partners who put in their fair share. I am my daughter's primary caretaker and do the vast majority of the domestic responsibilities around our home. My wife is the breadwinner. My wife is very happy with my parenting and our division of labor in our home. I also make sure my wife gets leisure time free of our daughter whenever she wants it. This has done little to dissuade Beth from making disparaging comments. We all recently went to an event at a park. This event wasn't really my thing, but I went along to keep our daughter occupied. This way my wife could relax and enjoy catching up with her friends without having to chase around our high-energy preschooler. Beth commented that it's nice my wife has a babysitter, as if me spending time with my daughter is babysitting and not parenting. Beth and my wife have plans coming up to go to a crafting workshop. While discussing their plans for the day, Beth asked my wife if I'd babysit her kids since I'd be staying home with my daughter. She did not offer to pay, so my wife shot her down. Beth said she probably has to cancel if I won't watch her kid. My wife said that's too bad and she'll go alone. Beth has had several months to arrange childcare for their plans, but likely told her parents yesterday and found out they couldn't. Having enough money to hire a babysitter isn't the issue either. Beth is successful in her field and very comfortable financially. If Beth had ever offered to watch our daughter or wasn't completely toxic towards me because I have a penis, I'd have no problem helping her out. Her entitled attitude about me babysitting for free is what gets me the most. I'd never ask someone to babysit my kid without offering to pay. Edit for info. I wanted to give more info to address the repeated questions. My wife is still friends with Beth because she is the most reliably there for her friend. Beth nearly always makes time and space for my wife when she's in need of someone outside of us. Additionally, they've been friends since they were children. Beth wasn't always this toxic, but has always been someone to stir the pot. Beth and I aren't friends. I very occasionally put up with her for my wife's sake. I ignore Beth and internally roll my eyes at her bombastic statements. I learned early on not to engage with her rhetoric. She's just trying to bait me into arguing with her. My wife does shut Beth down or correct her when she's being toxic. My wife and I agree that the misandrous comments won't fly around our daughter. I usually give Beth very little thought. I was just so stunned by the audacity of her entitlement that I had to post it. The next one is an entitled parent story. Yesterday, I 37F arrived in the US and hurried to the airport restroom. I suffer from radiation colitis due to cancer treatment, making me susceptible to diarrhea and incontinence. While disembarking, I had a minor accident but tried to hold it until I reached the bathroom. This wasn't the first time it happened, so I always carry spare clothes and wipes when I travel. To my dismay, I noticed a long line at the women's restroom. However, the family care bathroom was unoccupied with nobody waiting to use it. Thinking nothing of it, I entered. I heard some screaming behind me, but with the busy airport environment, I ignored it as I closed the door. A woman carrying a baby physically inserted herself between the door, causing it to open. The following interaction took place. Angry EM, excuse me, this is a family restroom, it's not meant for you. Me struggling to hold it in. I'm sorry, but you'll have to wait. We need to use this bathroom. Me, it's not your concern, but I have a disability. What disability? She persisted in preventing me from closing the door with her body and hands, all while holding her baby. She kept screaming, what disability? Despite her grip, I managed to overpower her, pushing her back with the door, and finally closed and locked it. To hell with her and her baby. Family restrooms, which in my opinion should have a different name altogether, are not exclusively for her, and she has no right to harass a cancer patient simply because she chose to have children. I genuinely hope she and her baby experience a situation similar to what I just went through. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.